Thank you. Sounds working. Okay, awesome. We zijn privet, jasrat was videt. Okay, I was really nervous about that, but that was all the Russian I know, and I learned during this weekend. So that meant good morning, welcome everybody, something like that. Let's get this show on the road. I'm the opening keynote, and we're gonna make it a good morning. We're gonna learn a lot. And let's start with quality engineering in the DevOps time period. So, a short introduction about myself. I'm an agile test consultant for Ordina. I've been doing that for the last 5-6 years. I've been doing testing and agile together. And the learning experience that I had at a couple of big banks, consulting them and consulting other companies, that are basically the vision presentation that I've come up with. So, testing has changed in the last couple of years. Looking back, when I started 6 years ago, we had this definition at our company, and testing was an independent judgment about the quality of the test object. That was our definition. That was what testing was. And testing has changed over the years. Testing is different now, because when we're doing DevOps, working together, getting better quality there, it's not the definition we want. We don't want an independent judgment. No, we want quality from the beginning, from the start, and we want to work it up. So, a new definition would be way more in meaning like getting fast feedback on your product, helping it create a better product, making it better. So, the means of getting fast feedback on your product would be a new definition for me about testing. We used to work different when I started. We used to work waterfall, and nowadays we do more DevOps. So, quick question to the audience, and raise your hands if you're in a Scrum. Who's working in Scrum? Okay, that's about 60, maybe 70%. Who's still working waterfall? Okay. Who's working DevOps? Even less hands. Okay. So I'll do a quick explanation about DevOps and what I think DevOps is in a minute. So who's in the audience? Who of you are testers? Okay, that's a lot. Okay, are there developers here? Okay, some people might call themselves test automation or test automation engineers. Also quite some. Are there managers here? Oh, there are a couple of managers as well. Product owners. Okay, I think we have some double roles as well. Okay, well, welcome to everyone, because testing is for everyone, and everybody should test their product and know what testing is. So good of all of you to join, and especially the testers. It's awesome. So in Waterfall we used to look at our specification, we would analyze them, we'd create a big document, we would create a functional design, maybe a technical design, we would create piles of documentation, we would hand that over and we'll build our software, and then based on that documentation, the testers will create their test cases, test their software, and then we would get it at some point into production or just keep that cycle going forever and ever. So, the change to DevOps is that we don't do that, well, we do those things, but we don't do them as big parts. So we do them as small. And then what you get is you get this virtuous circle that goes around and around through the different phases. So you can think all these different phases we still have, but we'll do them smaller and we'll do them differently. And we'll probably do them in a way like Scrum. We'll deliver value each sprint. So that's either every 2, 3, or 4 weeks, depending on your sprint length. And for me, DevOps is about delivering value, and delivering value fast, and continuously delivering value. And testing in that gets a different meaning as well. Where we used to have one part where we would test is not one part anymore. We're not going to give feedback at one moment about our product. No, we're going to do that continuously. Actually, we're going to help build quality from the start. So, test is part of everything. And if test is the correct word, I would prefer feedback. Because testing has the meaning of something that is done and then testing it. So feedback is a better description, just knowing where you stand and getting the feedback about your product. And that's what you do for all the phases now. You get feedback. You get feedback early, and you get it as much as often to build a high quality product and deliver value. So a lot of people work Scrum. So in this presentation I added Scrum. Who doesn't know Scrum in this audience? It's okay, I see one hand. So in short, product backlog, you have your items that you want to build, you'll take them into a sprint that takes a couple of 2, 3 or 4 weeks, and you'll build that product that delivers value. And you want to have it at the point that it delivers value. And testing in this is actually everywhere. It's not just for the Scrum team, it's not just at the end when we delivered something, it's all around. And I'm going to show you how that works together. Another term I've heard lately is quality assurance. Quality assurance for me, well, I have insurance for when I get into an accident, for when it really goes wrong. So assurance for me doesn't sound like the right term. So quality assurance, what does that mean? That, well, we try to, well, when it goes wrong, we have something like a document to say that we tested it properly, or we have some legal document saying we are okay. I like assistance more, and this is a term I took from Atlassian. So quality assistance is about assisting the quality all over the product. So we're moving from quality assurance to quality assistance. Instead of ensuring, we're helping, and we're helping the quality get formed. So what is the definition of quality engineering? Well, this is what I found on the internet. Quality engineering is the management, development, operations and maintenance of IT systems and enterprise architecture with a high quality standard. What does that mean? That quality engineering is basically for every single part of your software, you need to make sure that that it is of a high quality standard and that you think about quality. So how do we get there? How do we get to quality engineering? How do we get to properly testing in Scrum, Agile? How do we make sure we deliver value and quality and get early feedback and fast feedback? According to me, this has to happen. We as testers shouldn't only be focused on testing. We should become quality engineers. We should have quality there from the start. We all know that you don't test quality in, you only prove that quality is there or not. We need to make sure that automation makes our lives more fun, we can deliver value faster, and have even better testing. That's not the only part, because with automation you can't do everything, you have to explore as well. And you must explore your product and your software. And at the end of the grand tour, I'll keep that as a surprise. So, moving from us as testers towards quality engineers. That's a big step. So, taking it back towards your team. In DevOps, we all want to create multidisciplinary teams with Dev, Ops, business analysts, testers, everyone in there. And they all have a shared responsibility for the quality. We all want them to think about quality and put it up front. What I see a lot is when I walk into companies is that this is not happening. And why is this not happening? Because we have someone that's still responsible for testing. And that takes it out. The tester should have tested better. That's what I hear a lot in these teams. So this has to change. I've worked for ING, a big bank in the Netherlands, actually one of the bigger banks in the world. And what they did is they sent all the testers away. At one moment, one architect said, testers are waste, let's get rid of them. Well, we all know what happens then, right? Bad quality gets delivered. That's what happened for them as well. They were one of the biggest banks with the most interruptions. They had a lot of production incidents, they had a lot of incidents, and it cost them quite a lot of money. So what did they do? They hired me with a group of other consultants to help the company. And we did that as quality assistants engineers or quality engineers, and we helped the team and we coached the teams. So just getting rid of your testers isn't an option, but it was good for something, because nowadays they deliver value really fast, they're in the agile mindset, they deliver quality, but they had to have the team responsible for quality. And by removing the tester, they first had the pain, but they did at the end. And this is also, if you keep this in all these roles in your team, what will happen is you will do waterfall. You will all do your own part in the sprint. You will just walk through waterfall over and over again. Same goes for the analyst, someone that's analyzing and creating and thinking about your designs. It's not the way to go. You want to make sure that everybody is involved in that process. So you want to go towards quality engineering. And this is what they did at Spotify. So I didn't work for Spotify, but I had quite some calls with the quality engineers there to understand how they work. So they have a dever in their team. They have someone that's for operations, and they have someone that's quality minded, a quality engineer. So what they do in their team is like they have someone that's there to make sure that the quality process is in order and that it stays towards the high quality they have. And they make sure that this person is involved in coaching the team and getting them there and helping them establish a high quality level all over, from start to end, with automation there to support it. And this is what we did at ING. We were quality assistants or agile test coaches, and we helped the teams from the side. And the term quality assistants comes from Atlassian, because what they did at Atlassian is the same thing. They had at one point all the dev teams working on a product, and they had one big test team, like a big net to catch all the bugs. And what happened there is that the dev teams kept making mistakes, they kept making bugs, because the safety net would catch them. The test team would catch their bugs and send it back to the teams. So what Atlassian did is basically the same as ING. They did it earlier than ING, to be honest. They sent the testers away, or actually they stopped their big integration test at the end and just said, teams, fix your own stuff. We're not going to test it anymore. Well, that went wrong at the beginning, but then the quality assistance model came alive. So what they did is the same as for ING. The testers became part of the team to help the teams with testing and their responsibility for quality. So the definitions that those companies use is: a quality engineer at Spotify will help developers and teams cultivate a quality mindset, advocate for quality while assisting engineers with software development and test automation best practices. And the quality assistant at Atlassian is: they optimize the process by empowering and educating developers to test their own features to production quality standards. They help the teams. Instead of testing and making sure that they are the ones writing the test, they help the teams doing it. Because developers can automate tests as well, but they need the mindset. They need to be remembered that they need to test, because they tend to forget. They want to build quickly and beautiful products. And that means not testing, because it saves time, and that comes to the entire circle. So, what do we need to do to become a quality engineer? We need to advocate for quality. We need to make sure that we put quality on the agenda. Tell everybody, because we don't want to make our customers unhappy. Actively coach developers, operations engineers, business, everybody. Because business tends to cut corners sometimes when it goes to quality, because that feature needs to go live. But if it hasn't been tested properly, don't do it. The harm it can do is maybe more than releasing it 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. Make testing part of the development process. Coordinate your testing efforts. What I see a lot of times is that, especially in DevOps teams, I see it happening at my current company as well. We have these DevOps teams with developers, testers, analysts, they still have the roles, but they are sub-optimizing. They are really good teams. They go really quickly, but when it goes towards production and has to work with other teams, it doesn't really work because they didn't do proper alignment, they didn't do proper testing. So make sure you coordinate that. You talk with other teams. Test reporting and test visualization. It's always important to see where you come from and where you're going to, and to know where your quality stands. We have a last keynote about that, visualizing quality. So take your pick from that. And spot opportunities for test automation. Because what you can automate saves you boring, redundant test work. Quality from the start. The next part. So we don't test quality in. Quality happens when the first moment when we think about something we want to create, we have to make sure that it gets there. So you have to make sure that you're there at the beginning, at your refinements. And what I see a lot happening is that we have a big business structure. We have customers, we have our strategy, we have our managers, we have CEOs, we have business parties, we have so many people walking around there, and they don't have one clear view, one clear story to tell towards the teams. Make sure that there is one story and one clear story, because most of the times bad product owners make it hard for teams to deliver value and quality. So having one story is important, and making sure that that's there, and you bridge that gap further towards features with user stories or product backlog items. Because if that is not clear for the team, they can't deliver value. So make sure that you don't get crap in, crap out. Deliver the team with the information they need, and make sure that as a team you get the information you need and you know the background information. And that means taking teams on a journey. And how do you do that? Well, that's what I'll explain right now. So telling the story. What do you see on this picture? Just shout it out.
Balloons.
Balloons.
Burma.
Burma. That's correct, actually. We see a rising sun, we see temples. The picture isn't that clear, but so this is what we see. This is what we could even try to build something with balloons and with temples and a rising, or we don't know if it's a rising sun or actually a sun going down. So let me tell you a story. Because this is one of my most fond memories when traveling. I love to travel. This was in Myanmar, Burma, about 3 years back. And it started in Yangon, the capital. I went into a bus. The bus is cramped. I'm pretty tall, but the buses there are really small, so you're cramped like this for 8-9 hours in a bus. Didn't have any sleep. So during the entire night I didn't sleep, and I arrived at a location. It was so dark I couldn't see where, about 3:30, 4 in the morning. We get into the back of a truck, we went to our hostel where we wanted to sleep, we got dropped off, and we're walking in, tired, exhausted, dirty, smelling. You get the idea. You walk in, and you see people coming running out. They run out, they run out, they run out. Okay. And they scream, "Hey guys, are you gonna join us? We're gonna go to the temples." Okay, guess so. I wasn't too enthusiastic at that moment, but okay, yeah, why not? My night was ruined anyway. So we went on these scooters, we drove through sand roads in the complete dark. I had almost no light. We stopped at a place I couldn't even see. We went into a temple. Everything was there was like this high. We had to go through a staircase that was this high. And we got up to a temple. And on the top, it wasn't anything to see, but in the moments that followed, we saw the sunrise. It's the sunrise. And we saw the temples come up, and we see the hot air balloons coming up. This was one of the best moments and one of the best days of my life, which started really shitty. I can tell you that. So why do I tell you this story? This picture has a different meaning to me than to you, especially when you looked at the start. And if you look at the picture right now, you see something different because you have a small story behind it. Why it's important for me and what is there and why. Because otherwise you get interpretation differences. So what do you see?
A couple in the bottle.
A couple in a bottle. And, well, the couple seems to be having fun, right? Yeah. So, actually, that's not what's there because there are dolphins there. That's what I wanted to show you, but you looked with a different mindset to this picture. Why? You have experience, you know what you want to see, so you see something. But there's more that meets the eye. So, if you would take this picture, give it to a kid below 4 or 5 years old, somehow at that age they already change, they would see dolphins. Because that's how they know it, that's how they remember it. That's what they want to see, so they see dolphins. And we see the couple because that's what we want to see. So, we want to make sure that we align our story. So we want to see the same thing. We want to make sure that we have the same destination in mind, that we all know what's there to come and why we're building things. So you want to make sure that you have that perfectly clear for yourself. Techniques for that are impact mapping, which will help you make impact with your product by mapping it out and making sure that you know how to impact your customers and delivering that impact. This will make a clearer picture for you and your team about what you're going to deliver. And another technique is user story mapping. User story mapping is a technique that helps you get the user story or get the line of what a user would do clear and map out which steps he takes. So these are pretty common techniques. If you Google them, you will find enough information, and it will help you make sure that you get that bigger picture there, that you have a clear picture and a clear destination to go to. This is what I do to help my teams, or actually help product owners envision what they're going to do and how they're going to make sure that the team builds the right thing and delivers quality and value. So, going back to Scrum, because I saw a lot of people are working Scrum, this technique would be here. Understand your backlog, understand the big picture, know why there are items there. And then you get to the user story part. Because you need to have good user stories, and we all know as a user I want, well, something because it seems important. That's how we write user stories a lot of the times, but they don't really pack the punch, so we really know what to build. And then we add some specifications, maybe a designer adds some specifications, or an analyst, and some acceptance criteria. And we'll probably skip refinements because I see a lot of teams not refining. So you want to make sure that you communicate properly. Otherwise you get stuff like this. I don't think this person wanted on his cake, I want sprinkles. Or best wishes, Susanna. Underneath that, we will miss you. Or happy birthday, Calvin, and then green underneath it in red. I don't think we want this. And if this happens to cakes, these come from cakeracks.com, they're actual cakes. If these come in cakes that are not that complex, with simple instructions, we can guarantee this happens in software. We'll recognize those features that are written down and not exactly as we want it, because we didn't talk about it, but we just thought we know someone wanted it. So for that, you want to make sure that you do your refinements. You do your refinements with teams. You involve everybody. You involve the entire team. So the team knows what you're going to build, what you're going to build next. And you want to do that as simple as possible. And with simple, the best way is to use examples. Because examples are easy. They can become tests. And they are your specifications. You can get those all from examples, because an example is concrete, it's clear, and if you have those and you can all think of those, then your story will make more sense and more clear. And then the next step is going on towards automation. I will follow up on that later. So an example, so this is a really simple example. If you wanted to, the user story was, as an employee, I want to find other employees so I can find more information about employees. Seems clear. Somehow if I give this to someone, they will ask a million questions, so I made it a bit more clear. I added an example. So the search parameter would be Peter, Jan, Jens, and the one that makes a mistake. And then the result would be Peter Jensen, Annie Jan, hey, the last name as well, Jan van Buren and Peter Jensen. They're nice Dutch names, so. And then Jan will fall off if we add an extra S. This is what you can do with your team. This is what you can make it easier to understand your user story. And you can use these as test cases as well. So this is just a simple example. But there are techniques to this. If you want to know more, specification by example is one of those techniques, or which one I prefer to use a lot of the times, example mapping. So who uses Cucumber here? I see a couple of hands. So Cucumber is an automation framework that helps you to automate via business language, given when then. And it's used quite a lot, especially within the Netherlands. And then they use it as a test automation framework, another collaboration software or collaboration tool, as that was the real purpose. And I always point them to example mapping. Example mapping is what they say is a good technique to use their software easy and good in a good way. Because it's collaboration software, it's not an automation tool, it's not automation software, but still we misuse it for that. So what do you do with this technique? This technique helps you to make your refinements more clear and more easy. You will hang your story on top, you will get around with your team, and you will think, what kind of business rules or rules are there to this story? What does it have to do? And then you'll try to think of examples, or you turn it the other way around. You will think of examples. What are the examples that this new feature has to do? And that's actually the way it works better, if you start with the examples and then think of the rules, because otherwise we tend to be stuck in the pattern, but it works both ways. And this then makes it pretty clear what you want and how you can build your software with your test cases, with your business rules you have to build, and the story. And in the case you have questions that are not clear, that you need to investigate, there's room for questions. And a tip to writing good examples is the Friends method, as they call it. Every Friends episode starts with the one where, and the one where Joey meets Phoebe, for example. That's a good way to write examples, because it forces you to write down an example. And make sure you write down the result as well. So that's a pitfall with this technique. So, if we have understanding the big picture on the product backlog, powerful refinements will help you get your user stories ready. And ready user stories you can take into your sprint or towards your sprint backlog. So it's a technique that will help you make your user stories clearer and will help you to get there and help delivering value faster. So, quality from the start. We also have another method you can use or you can take with you, because if you've written down these examples and if you've written down your tests, you can use them as a failing acceptances, you can automate them up front. That's actually what we did at ING, and then use them to create your unit test by using either test-driven development, which I prefer, especially in complex situations, or your unit tests. And then a couple of those tests will make sure that you, at one point, have your acceptance test passing and green. So, I forgot to add a slide, but this is what we did at ING. At ING, I was coaching a team that was really upfront and they were really fast, and they wanted to have the next step in test automation. So what they did is they had a nice page, a feature page, that run the tests on acceptance, and they did these refinements using the example mapping method. And what they did is they defined a couple of acceptance tests, and then the user story would get into the sprint. And then what they did on the first day is create some tests. They would show them on a web page, and then they were still red, because if they would run the test, it wouldn't pass. And then they start building the feature, and then at one point the test would go green, meaning that it was in their acceptance environment and it was ready. So what they did is they continuously informed the business on how far they were and how they were making more and more of their features, but they started with the tests because the test would prove that the feature was there. And they showed it continuously via a web page, so what was in acceptance was there and it could go to production any moment. So that's a good development practice. There are a lot of good development practices, so if you want to know more, we can talk later on, but you would use those in your sprint, like combining ATDD, acceptance test driven development, or BDD, to make sure that you automate first, you do the right things, and that you deliver value. And TDD is also a good development practice, and there are way more good development practices. So I'm not going to stick to that, but if you want to know more, just tackle me in the break or any moment. Then we have automation. And automation is something that I've been, doing at the company where I'm at right now. I'm helping them to make sure that they have automation. Like a year ago, they didn't have any automation at all. So they were still doing everything by hand and by guess. They were guessing which test they should run, so it was quite a risk they took. So why automate? These are all familiar reasons. We've heard them and seen them all come by. But the one I want to highlight is fun. Because it's fun to automate, it's fun to learn new things, and it makes our lives more fun. Because we can focus on the tests that are more fun to us. We don't want to repeat the same regression test over and over again. That's boring work. And if you have to do something 3 or 4 times, it's cheaper to automate most of the times than just repeating it. So how to approach it? Who knows the test automation pyramid here? Some hands. Okay, so test automation, what we tend to do is, from a tester's perspective, is automate at the front end because we're used to testing there. That's the user interface, but that's not where we want to test because they're big, they're slow, they're expensive, hard to maintain. Don't do your tests there. Go down deeper. So integration is already better. In integration level, you can do your tests quicker. They're less depending on. And you can go to the API level and the services directly. Saves a lot of time and helps you to test your integration. And the unit and component level, that's where you want to test. You want to do proper unit tests. You want to do proper component tests. You want to do good testing there because it's fast, it's reliable, and it gives you fast feedback. It makes your cycle short. If you're developing, you should want proper unit tests because they help you make your features better and make sure that you don't break stuff. And you can use TDD for that or ATDD for your integration or user interface level. That is a technique that will help you do it up front. So at my current company, we're actually implementing software from a vendor. So automation there up front, that's where we're at now. But we do it, at the user interface, some at integration level, because we don't have anything to say about unit tests or TDD at this moment. So what we'll do is we'll actually now overcompensate for these two, but we're working on making sure that they get our tests as well, so they can run our tests in their environment, so they get quicker feedback. And they don't do proper unit testing, so we catch quite a lot of things they should have seen with unit testing, so we're actually helping them to use our cases and our scenarios to create their test-driven development scenarios or unit tests. And of course, don't take this percentage-wise as something that's the truth, because every context is different. Some might be like ours, might be way more developing from vendors, and you can't do anything with unit and component, and you have to integrate it in your environment, so you should focus more on integration. But it's a good, good mind and a good mindset to think about, can we test it as early as possible? Also depends on what kind of language you use, if you can always do proper unit testing or not. And employee versus client facing, it's all about risk. You want to keep it in mind. Testing is also about reducing risks. So make sure that you keep focused on that and don't start automating everything. If there's no risk, there's no tests. But then why should you build it? And automation goes also further than just test automation. Although we tend to focus a lot on test automation, the entire build pipeline can make sure that you deliver value faster. And I took the one of Exadia, which is a good simple example. You want to have your version control, you want to have your build, your unit test, deploy, you want to have your automated integration test there, and you want to have your production, you want to automate as much as possible. And if you automate as much as possible, you can get that feedback fast. You build fast, you can deliver value, you don't spend a lot of time in that cycle that's not adding value. And the next step in this is infrastructure as code. We're actually at this moment right now, we test our, we actually have our infrastructure in code. We test it, we check where the differences are between version 1 and version 2. We have version control on that. And then we can just run the scripts and make an entire, from zero to an entire deployed environment there from code. We have everything in code now. That makes it easier to make sure that if there's a bug or something doesn't work, you can just see what kind of changes were there. So automation is one of these things that helps you, especially during the during your sprints, and will make sure that you deliver value faster, and it will help you get there. And it will really make sure that you can go faster. And explore to test, because what I see a lot is that we tend to focus on test automation. Because test automation seems to be the answer for everything nowadays. We had a big discussion at ING, I think 3 years ago, because one of the architects said, that's the one that said that we don't need testers, we're gonna automate everything. We don't need manual testers, we don't need manual testing, we automate all the tests. Yeah, right. Yeah, we all know that you can't automate everything, you can only automate checks. And to show you that example, I have a short video for you. There's no sound here, but okay, so count the amount of passes the team in white makes. So the team in white, they will pass the ball, count. Okay, how many passes did they make? 13, 11, 12. So counting is already difficult for you. It's 13. It's okay. I know the quality of the video isn't that high, but the answer is 13. So you well, some of you didn't do the proper check, but a lot of you did a proper check. You checked if the number was 13, but you didn't really test. So now look at the screen again. Don't look at the passes, just look at the screen. Because there's some surprise in it for us. So look at the right here. This guy. So who didn't notice that? And be honest. You were counting, yeah. So you weren't testing. You weren't looking. You weren't discovering. And that's exactly the point I want to make. With test automation, we focus on our checks. If we would have a table, we would check if it would have four legs, if the height would be 80 centimeters. But you know, if it's sturdy or not, that's your test. And that's one of the more important things. So I took the testing checking synergy as an example. So Testing or checks help us to confirm what we already know. But in agile software development, we'll do refinements, won't do big designs up front, so our information, the things we know up front will be less. And that's what we want. And we'll put some checks in place to test if that information that we know is correct. But there is a gap. There are known unknowns, stuff we know we don't know, and there's stuff we don't know. Yeah. So we know that our table is 80 centimeters high, that it's, I don't know, this big and that big, let's say 1 meters and 20 centimeters with 1 meters. We know that, but if it will stand sturdy on a flat surface, we don't know. We'll test. How it will be after 1 year of use, we don't know. That's what we can test. That's what IKEA tests with all those press benches. When the things go open and close, they open and close every drawer more than 200,000 times. So they made a check out of it actually, but a lot of things we don't know. So that's why we do testing. We want to know more about our product. We want to create a bigger information. We want to know more information about our product. That's why we do testing. That's why we're all here. This is what we do. We test. We discover stuff. We find things that people didn't know. We find bugs, because that's unexpected behavior. We find things. And that's why we know more about the product than anyone. We as testers tend to know way more than everybody. And they will actually enable us to create better checks. Because if you've tested it and you see that an error occurs a lot of times with manual testing, you should automate it so you don't have to do that again. And a good way to do that is exploratory testing. So who knows what exploratory testing is? Cool. So exploratory testing is a style of testing in which you explore the software while simultaneously designing and executing your test using the feedback from the previous test to inform the next. That's quite a definition by Elizabeth Hendrickson, but it's a really good one. I like this one because what you do is you test, you will uncover information, and you will change your next test. Sorry. And you will use that to do really effective and proper testing. There are a couple of rules to it. You will do it in time box, because if you do it too long, you will lose focus. So use a time box. I prefer 30 minutes. Could be an hour, it could be 3 hours. But a time box. Use charters. Charters will guide you. A charter can be extensive, can be small, but it's actually the direction in which you want to test and what you want to test. It's kind of a scope and a mission. A debrief. Debrief is something you'll do at the end. You will talk about what you've seen and what you've learned, and you will do it in pairs. That means 2 of you will test together, and preferably not a tester and a tester, but take other people with you to do this process, because they can learn from it and they see different things. So what does it look like if you would do a process? You would throw a charter in, you would design, execute, learn, steer your new test, and you will repeat that after and after again. So you will take a lot of steps in your test, and at the end you will have a debrief. Releasing strategy, so you can automate this by making your customers your testers, which you can do if there's not a high risk. But if you're in a bank, you're testing banking software, this wouldn't be a good thing to do, because if you would get into problems there, it would be, catastrophe, I would say. So how does it work? Spotify uses this, for example. If they have a new feature, they will deploy that new feature to a couple of canaries. So a couple of people will get the new version, and they can test it. They can see if it works. And what they will do, they gather feedback. And the rest of the customers will use the old product. And there are a couple of variations in this. There's customer selection, but for example, they use at Spotify. They select a couple of customers to deploy the new version of the software on, and they will test it for them. You can use feature toggles. You can make your feature temporarily available for a couple of persons, so you'll make it available on the background. and you can use it. We use this actually in ING to test Ideal. It's a payment system, or actually Ideal with QR codes. And we had this running on the background for almost 2 months, so employees could use it, and customers were then allowed 2 months after. So we found quite some bugs in the beginning, but at the end there were no bugs anymore because all the employees were testing it as they were trying out. Or you can do a pilot, and a pilot would be starting a new website. So LinkedIn had a change a couple of months ago. They changed from their old to the new ones, and they did it simultaneously. So I give training in LinkedIn as well. So I had a training, and we had about 10 people on the old version and 3 people on the new version, which was quite inconvenience if you give a training. This is the ING example that was available only for the employees, and the pilot would be just starting a new website and making people write down that they want to do. So Explore is an important part. Explore is not only, you can do it within your team when you're building, and that's an important stage to do it on, using effective things like exploratory testing, but you can also explore your product when it's in production. I've been at a team a couple of weeks ago that were actually developing but have never seen it in production. So when I asked a couple of questions, they asked, how do you know all this? Well, I looked on your website and I clicked through the application. Oh, they didn't even know what they were building. So Explore, important part. Make sure what you're building, know what you're building. So the Grand Tour. Because that's all what we do it about. We do it for the customers. Like in an F1 car, if one component fails, your race is doomed. You need the perfect setup, the perfect engine, the perfect car to win. Everything needs to be good. If something breaks, it doesn't work, you don't even finish, or you have a horrible accident. So that's what that's what quality is about. We must make sure that quality is everywhere, not only in the software we develop, also in the systems we use, also in the performance, resilience, security, usability, accessibility. They're important. Make sure you keep them there. You test them. And also the other components you use, your infrastructure, your servers, your database, but also your build pipeline. In ING we had one central build pipeline and it was constantly down. So that made sure that teams weren't developing or actually putting features live. So make sure you test your components you use and make sure you use that. And you check that. Because what quality engineering is about keeping your customer in mind, always. So to deliver value, to deliver quality, and make sure we have happy customers. To summarize, the techniques we have is that we should not be testers, we should be test of quality engineers. We must have a broader focus, have quality from the start, by understanding the big picture, making sure we have powerful refinements, and that we use good development practices. That we use automation to make things faster, better, because that will help us. And explore our product, because then we would know what our product is about. Then we know what kind of new things we can learn from it. And the Grand Tour, make sure that we have everything there. And to start with that, key principles about quality engineering. Take these with you, make your own principles, and start with this within your team. Take it with you and use them. Because quality, don't compromise, and this is to start from your new journey. As Dr. Strange asked, how do I get from here, where we're all standing right now, to there, the dot on the horizon with quality engineers and all the good development practices? Study and practice, years of it. If we'll use our framework, Scrum, and we'll do our retrospectives, and we'll learn, and we'll take small steps towards the future. We'll do it. And you're all here to learn. So take these new things that you will learn today and use them. And use them in your line of work. Thank you.
Друзья, сейчас у нас будет небольшая сессия вопросов-ответов. Если они уже у вас есть, вы можете поднять руку наверх, я к вам подойду, и вы зададите этот вопрос. Также напоминаю то, что у нас есть приложение слайдов, там тоже могут появляться вопросы. Нам, наверное, нужно отдать переводчик для Geoffrey. И, друзья, если среди вас кто-то, кто уже готов задать вопрос нашему харизматичному спикеру, просто поднимите руку наверх. Я подойду. Вот, есть один человек, иду к вам. А мы пока давайте поаплодируем самому смелому человеку, который первый поднял руку. Так, пожалуйста, представьтесь и задавайте свой вопрос. Прошу вас.
Sorry?
Меня зовут Александр.
Slide up.
So, my question is about the development process. You're talking about Scrum, techniques, and you're talking about DevOps process. What is the difference between DevOps process of development and Scrum and probably Kanban as agile techniques?
Okay, so if I'm trying to understand your question correctly. So what if you differ from different techniques? What if you don't use Scrum, or you use parts of Scrum, part of DevOps, part of Agile? I think that for your quality process, you have to think about what this means, because every situation is different, and you just have to use. You just have to think about, how can I embed the things that I'll find today and I'll learn today, and I can take them to me and take them to our company. And even if you take some of these practices to waterfall, taking quality first, for example, making sure you're involved from the first moment, that will help you to get better quality, because you're there at the first moment, you know what it's about, and not only you, but also involve the rest of your team. Is that a bit the answer you were looking for? We have some questions here. What, in your opinion, makes a tester an excellent tester? That's a good question. By Anonymous. So, a good tester for me is a curious one. Someone who wants to know everything, and that wants to explore, that wants to find more about the product, and that is not focused on finding bugs, but actually making sure that they help the process become better. So they'll be guardians of quality on one hand, and have a curious mindset to continuously improve their product and find things that other people don't know about. So I hope I answered for the anonymous one. So the next question, who is usually should provide user story? And what are you doing if user story which provided from customer is unreal or wrong? Okay, so these are a bit two questions in one. Who should provide the user story? Okay, that's a good question. The user story should be something of a cooperation between your product owner or your customer or your business partner and you and your team. It shouldn't be like one directional, if you ask me. And that's why, if you look at question 2, what if it's wrong? You want to make sure that you talk with your customer and have your refinements together if that's possible. Because if they provide user stories that are wrong or that are not clear, you can't deliver what they ask, or you'll deliver something completely different. So make sure you get clarity about that. Discuss it and talk about it together. And make sure that you enable the discussion in that case. And that's why you use these refinement techniques, to make sure that you do that in a proper and orderly fashion. So again, Anonymous, I hope I answered your question. The next one is, how do you interact with information security specialists? I would say the same way as I would interact with different people. So I don't know exactly what the question is behind it, but I can think about you have your security information analysts, people that really want to, put the security policy on one, and that will force you in some way. I would say open the dialogue, discuss things, and make sure you do it with a whiteboard and draw things out. And make sure that you discuss things openly and properly. The third question, how do I get away from waterfall in a Scrum team? So, going away from waterfall, basically towards a Scrum team, that's a kind of a big thing. You wanna make sure that you start with making smaller teams. You want to make sure that you don't have separate teams working on separate things. One team doing analysis, one team doing development. You want to create multidisciplinary teams, and you want to start working in sprints and start just using the Scrum framework. And if you start using the Scrum framework, that will allow you to improve on it, because the retrospectives are one of the important things in which you can talk about how you're going to improve your process. So I would say just start using the Scrum framework in small teams, in multidisciplinary teams if possible, and start doing it. I see one question over here.
Да. Вопрос из зала. Мне кажется, этого человека зовут Евгений. Скорее всего, телепатия. Прошу.
Hello, I'm Eugene. My question is about team development. You're saying how when you come to a company and then you fire all the testers, which could be fun sometimes, but what do you do if you have a dedicated team of testers, or maybe one tester in a team of developers who already know the product really well, maybe even better than developers? What do you do with them?
Okay, so first of all, my suggestion is not to fire you or testers. So if there are the managers in the room, don't fire testers, because testers know the product really well. So thank you for that question, Eugene. But what you basically want to do is you want to make sure that your testers are not in a dedicated team, but get them in the different teams, and make sure that they'll start with becoming more quality engineers. And how do you do that? Because that's most of the time a hard thing. Well, give testers freedom, and you as testers start being at refinements and talk about about designing the product, and start talking to your developers. Because unit testing, if you have proper unit testing, that will save you a lot of time as a developer, and will give you earlier feedback. And same goes for your refinements. Go to your refinements, make sure that you early on know what the product is about. Is that a bit of the answer? Okay, that's a thumbs up. Cool. Will there be a link to the presentation?
Я могу ответить на этот вопрос. Да, друзья, презентации у нас будут через неделю. Всем вам высланы, 100%. А также через 2 недели вы сможете получить видео с этой конференции и фото, которое делают наши фотографы и видеографы. Да, это все у вас обязательно будет, так что не волнуйтесь, мы все сделаем.
So I think yes. I didn't understand that quite, but otherwise I will post it on my Twitter feed. It was on the beginning of the presentation. I will post a short link on where you can find the presentation. So no worries, it will be up in about 30 minutes. So let's see, the next one. We have a pop. How to ensure management that testers are not a waste of time. Ooh, that's a good one. So how to say that we're not a waste of time? Well, one thing, probably we know the most of the product because we test it. We find things that people didn't know, and then we'll try to help fix them. So we're designing always, we're finding things. So our product information is really important. And to be honest, what happened at ING, that's the biggest example of why you shouldn't fire testers. What they did is they fired all the testers in all the different teams, and the teams were not happy about it. and the customers weren't happy about it. The teams had to test themselves but didn't know how, because testing is a profession. It's one of the best professions, it's a really hard one, because doing proper testing is really important. And the customers weren't happy because they had a lot of production bugs, downtime, failures, and they lost customers. So for management, the big message would be, don't fire your testers if you want to keep your company alive. We prevent a lot of things, bad things from happening. We're guardians of the product, I would say. Okay, so I get one question to do, and I hope I answered this one, otherwise look me up in the break. So what are the disadvantages of Agile? None. To me, none. No.